Conversation, guidance, and confidence. Conversation, because what I would hope is that this afternoon will be the first of many conversations that you've had, that you will have. It may be that in the past you haven't had a lot of conversations with your young person that's in your home, but let today be the first of those. It may be that you're starting late to have those conversations, but don't keep putting it off. It may be that you've been having a lot of conversations with that young person. Let today be the start of having renewed conversations, to revisit some things, and to talk about those things that provide for guidance in their lives. As it says in Proverbs 1 that was read for us a moment ago, these words are supposed to lead us through life. They're words that we're not supposed to forget. Proverbs 22, verse 16, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not soon depart from it. That these are things that are to teach us and to guide us throughout our lives, and that even though the actual words may not always be there in front of them, they will always be in their heart. And though they may depart from your home, these truths will never depart from them. That's the kind of guidance that we're talking about, the kind of guidance that goes deep within the heart, because that's the kind of guidance that really gives us confidence and security. Because we know that as a child leaves that home, when they go out into the world, that is a reflection of the way in which that home was. And it may be that they are turning completely against it. But most of the time it's because of that's the way it was in that home. And when they go out into that world, there's things that child can do that bring shame and dishonor upon the parents and our God. And so if we are teaching them and having these continual conversations, we should have a lot of confidence in the fact that they're not going to depart from them. And so that's what we want to talk about. Turn with me to Proverbs 5, the 5th proverb. And notice a few things in verses 7 through 14. The book of Proverbs is that book that's described as being a book of wisdom, and particularly the wisdom that's imparted from a parent to a child, especially in the earlier chapters. In chapter 5, verses 7 through 14, he says, "Therefore hear me now, my children, and do not depart from the words of my mouth. Remove your way far from her, and do not go near the door of her house." In other words, remove from yourself the opportunity to be taken captive by a seductive person, lest you give your honor to others and your years to the cruel one. The reason that we're looking at this is particularly because of what it says in verse 9. You're going to give your honor to someone else. The way in which you're supposed to be living your life, the thing that gives you honor and nobility, that makes you stand out, you're going to give that away to someone else. And that is going to rob you of those precious years of your life that should be spent one particular way, but you're giving it away to someone else that is not deserving of that. And so here are some of those conversations I think you should have. The first one is this: I want to be the one that trains you. I want to be the one that trains my child. I don't want someone else to do that. I don't want to give that honor or that privilege to someone else. I know what they're going to teach them in the school system. I don't want them to be my child's teacher when it comes to things like morality, sexuality, even the creation of the world itself. I don't want them to be the teacher of those things. I don't want the workplace to be the place where they first learn the ethics behind business and fair dealings and the use of money. I don't want that to be their teacher. I don't want their friends who are their same age to be the ones who teach them about morality and how it is that you're supposed to interact with friends and others your same age. I don't want that. I want to be the one to teach my child. And the reason that I want to do that is because, first and foremost, that's what God has deemed best. Fathers, we're supposed to bring our children up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. This is something that God has given us charge to do, because this is the thing that if they will obey it, will give them a long life. It will give them a prosperous life, spiritually speaking. That this is something that develops within them, this nurturing and this admonition. What that means is we develop within them an appetite, a desire, that once they are in our home, and especially when they leave our home, that appetite is always there. They have that desire to know the things of God. I want to teach my child because I am the one who loves them. Other people will know them for a short period of time. They may have them in their class for a short period of time. They may work for them for a short period of time. But this is my child, and I love them. These other people can use them, and these other people like them, but none of them care for them the way that I do. I'm the one that loves my child. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 11 and 12 says this: My son, do not despise the chastening of the Lord, nor detest his correction. For whom the Lord loves, he corrects, just as a father in the son in whom he delights. The reason that I would take the time to have these conversations with my child is because I love them. The reason that I would set and correct them and say the course that you are on is not the right course. It is not the best direction for you. You are doing things in a way that is not appropriate and is going to lead you down the wrong path. I do that because I love them. For me to not say anything is to despise them. For me to not correct them is to despise them. But for me to chasten them is to be more godlike. And God chastens us because of how much He loves us. And none can deny the sacrificial love that He has. And ultimately, it's because I want to deliver them from hell. In Proverbs 23, and starting at verse 13. Proverbs 23 and verse 13. Most of you know that this particular proverb, verse 13, was like one of my favorite parenting verses because it says, do not withhold correction from a child, for if you beat him with a rod, he won't die. But notice that the reason that it's there, verse 14, you shall beat him with a rod and deliver his soul from hell. It's better to bear the stripes now than for all eternity. That's the point. It's not about being able to spank your child. It's not about being able to beat, as it says here, or to use a rod. That's not the point. The point is that if they are not punished for their iniquities here, they will be punished for their iniquities in eternity. And when they're in your home, that's when that time of correction is needed. He continues by saying this, my son, if your heart is wise, my heart will but be zealous for the fear of the Lord all the day. For surely there is a hereafter, and your hope will not be cut off. Hear, my son, and be wise, and guide your heart in the way. Do not mix with winebibbers, or with gluttonous eaters of meat, for the drunkard and the glutton will come to poverty, and drowsiness will clothe a man with rags. Listen to your father who begot you, and do not despise your mother when she is old. Buy the truth and do not sell it. Also wisdom and instruction and understanding. The father of the righteous will greatly rejoice, and he who begets a wise child will delight in him. Let your father and your mother be glad, and let her who bore you rejoice. Notice this in verse 26. My son, give me your heart, and let your eyes observe my ways. A harlot is a deep pit, and a seductress is a narrow well. She also lies in wait as for a victim, and increases the unfaithful among men. Verses 29 through 35, through the end of the chapter, talk about how it is that we should not be wine-bibbers and not giving in to the redness of the eyes that comes with it, and all those seductive things that may appeal to them. But in verse 26, my son, give me your heart. I want to be the one who trains my child. I want to gain my child's heart and his confidence. And I want to do that not just through my instruction and correction, but because of the example that I set. I want them to be able to see that. And so when I talk to them, and some of the wisdom I tell them is this, is that, you're not the first to go through whatever it is that you're going through. And you are not alone in the midst of this. This generation of young people seems more prone to feeling inadequate, feeling unloved, unprotected than so many other generations, it seems. And most of it is traced back, I believe, to the idea that the parent just doesn't care because the parent isn't there. Our young people need to know that you are not by yourself. And you're not the first person to experience that. You're not the first person to have to deal with things like pornography. You're not the first person to have to deal with questions about sexuality. You're not the first person to have to deal with things like who to date. You're not the first person to have to deal with somebody who may try to bully you or make fun of you. You're not the first person to deal with that. And more than that, you're not alone in the midst of it. It tells us in 1 Peter 5 and verse 8 that Satan is like a lion, and he is walking around roaring, seeking whom it is he may devour. So we are to resist him, to be steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same sufferings are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. It's not just you that's going through it. There are others who are going through it as well. And your brothers and sisters are going through it also. And so you are surrounded by a host of people who are going through the same thing. You're not the first person who's wanted to hurt themselves because you don't think that life is worth living. You're not the first person to think that your parents don't care for you or love you or devoted to you. You're not the first one to think that. Everyone goes through it. And that is not to diminish what it is that you're going through, but it is to tell you this: I am the one who's trying to raise you. I am your parent. And there's a God in heaven who loves you and has surrounded you by others. And so we're told in James 5 and verse 16 that our trespasses, confess them to one another, that we are to be praying for one another. That because the reason being, because the effective, fervent prayer of a righteous man does avail much. And through these types of things, we can be healed. And so when we have that conversation with our young person that may be very, very difficult, that brings up subjects that we're not comfortable talking about, that maybe our parents didn't discuss with us, let it be that we understand. And let it be that they are not alone. Because regret is the cruelest teacher. It is a true statement that your sinful choices will haunt you the rest of your life. Because one sinful act is all it took to separate you from God to begin with. And each sinful act makes it that much more difficult to return to Him. And our sinful choices will haunt us the rest of our lives. There's been a lot of things that I have learned from, and there's been a lot of things that have caused me pain. Regret has been the cruelest of all of them. Knowing that I should have done something and I did not do it, or knowing that I did something that I should not have done. And the regret of that has haunted me forever. There are times where years have passed that I may not have even thought about it. And then in the middle of the night, I'll wake up and the thought of it will cross my mind. And my whole body reacts to it. How could I have possibly done that? Hebrews 12 and verse 16 reminds us about Esau. And that in the amongst believers there shouldn't be any kind of fornicator or profane person like Esau was, who for one morsel of food sold his birthright. For you know that afterward, when he wanted to inherit the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no place of repentance, though he sought it diligently with tears. There are some things that you may do as a young person that can never be undone. That verse that we read from Proverbs a few moments ago talks about not giving your honor to someone else. There are things that you have while you're growing up that you can only give away once. And once it is given away, there is never a returning to that giving away again. That your virginity, that kiss, that touch, those types of things are only given away once. It's a thing that's in our society that you can redo it and have a reset. But at best it's hollow. And it does meet with repentance in a lot of ways. But you can only give those things away once. You can give those things away anytime that you want to, because there are people everywhere who are more than willing to take it from you. But what you have when you are pure can never be taken away from you until you decide that. Don't give your honor to someone else. The regret that comes from that cannot be undone. There are men who may never be able to serve as elders because of mistakes in their past. We need to be aware that the choices we make while we are young cannot be undone in a lot of cases. There have been those who have come to me who have wanted to do things to their bodies. And they'll ask, is it okay to do that? Is it right? Is God okay with me doing that thing? And I say, well, why don't you wait about 2 years? Wait 2 years and then come back and let's ask that question then. If you can give 2 years of thought to it and still then be okay with it, maybe then it's an acceptable thing. But at the stage that many young people are at when they're wanting to do these things, you're giving your honor to someone else. And those are things that most older people who have made that same decision would not approve of making that decision because they live with the regret. We're told in Ecclesiastes 11 and verse 9, "Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes. But know that for all these God will bring you into judgment. Therefore remove sorrow from your heart. Put away evil from your flesh, for childhood and youth are vanity. The wise man says to enjoy being a young person, enjoy doing the things that a young person does, but know that you're going to answer for it. And so you should remove from yourself those things that are going to cause problems and anxiety and difficulties in later years. The problem that we often do is that we are always writing checks today that our future self is going to have to cash. They're going to have to pay the bill. We're eating the meal today. We're enjoying all of the festivities and the joy and everything today, but our future self is the one that's going to have to answer for that. What we are supposed to be about doing, and even our young are supposed to be about doing, you need to be thinking about future self. What is future self going to have to deal with because of the choice I'm making today? That's what we're supposed to be doing, and that's what the wise man is encouraging us to. And so we need to be aware of pride, because what usually happens is that's a lot of preacher talk. That's what you're supposed to say, what you get paid to say. Proverbs says that when pride comes, then comes shame, but with the humble is wisdom. We need to be humble enough to listen when others are telling us and giving us advice about such things. Another conversation is this: you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You have no clue. James 4 and verse 13 describes this very temporal thing, steam, vapor, that is here for a short period of time and then it vanishes away. And that's what he uses to describe what our life is. And so he says, come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we'll go to such and such a city and spend a year there, buy and sell and make a profit, whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? It's like a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall live and do this or that. But now you boast in your arrogance, and all such boasting is evil. One of the things that's really difficult for us as we're getting older, and for our young people, it is devastating often. Plans change. There's things as you've been going through school or maybe even through college that you've thought, this is the thing that I want to do with my life. This is the thing that I'm most talented in. This is the direction that I want to go in. Then it all comes crumbling apart and you can't find a job that, or there's not even a market for it anymore, or for whatever reason. Plans change. That should teach us how temporal our lives are. And that just because our plans have changed does not mean that our life is no longer worth living. Because we don't live for that anyway. We need to understand that even young people die. Have you had a conversation with your child this week that has given you confidence that if today was the day that you lost them, that they could stand before God? That's the importance of the conversation. That's the importance of the confidence. That's the importance of making sure that these things are instilled within their hearts and not just through rote obedience in our present only. Your faith is going to be challenged. We should teach them that as they go through life, there are going to be a lot of people who are telling them that you're wrong about that. Your religion or where you go to church is wrong about that topic. They will even be able to find preachers who will tell them the opposite of the things that we tell them here. Their faith is going to be challenged. They're going to go to school, and in school there are going to be those who are going to teach them your parents are ignorant and backwards people. They believe the earth was created in 6 days. They're going to tell us that we as a society are wrong, and we've had it wrong for all these years, that it's a male and a female, that it's not that way anymore. Everywhere, that faith is going to be put to the test. So Paul tells Timothy about the kind of lust that youthful people go through, to flee it. Flee also youthful lust, but pursue righteousness, faith, love, peace. But notice who the peace is called to be with. Peace with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. That there are those in the world who will teach you something different than what your God teaches. Your God teaches you to pursue peace with those who call on the Lord with a pure, undivided, unpolluted, uncontaminated heart. Proverbs 4 verse 13 tells us to take firm hold of instruction. Do not let go. Keep her, for she is your life. Do not enter the path of the wicked, and do not walk in the way of evil. Avoid it. Do not travel on it. Turn from it. Notice how many words are used to describe the way in which we're to react to this other way. Don't acknowledge it. Don't give it into it. Don't travel on it. Turn away from it. Pass on. The reason being is because these other people, they do not sleep unless they have done evil, and their sleep is taken away unless they make someone else fall. Misery loves company, and sin is a cancer. We know all these phrases and cliches, both within and without the scriptures, that teach us this, is that when people are doing things, they want to have company in the doing of it. And it's the same with evil. There are people who do evil things, they love to do evil things, and they love to have company when they do it. And they want you to be part of that company. We are to avoid it. 1 Peter 4, verse 3. Tell your young person today that we have spent enough of our past lifetime in doing the will of the Gentiles. When we walked in lewdness and lust and drunkenness and revelries, drinking parties and abominable idolatries. In regard to these things, these types of things, we are not to partake in because we spent enough of our past lifetime in doing those types of things. There's no good that comes from them. There's no idea of saying, well, what if I go to the party but I don't drink? What if I go to this particular thing but I don't do this particular thing? That is nonsense. You are a Christian. And as a Christian, we spent enough of our lifetime around those types of things. Now, we are to be those kinds of people. In regard to these things, they think it strange that you do not run with them. Notice that? Run with them. Who are your kids' running buddies? Who is it that's calling them on their phones and texting them and snap twittering or whatever it is today? Who is it? Do they think it's strange that they don't run with them? Or is it that, yes, they do run with them, but they don't necessarily participate in everything that we're doing, but they are our running buddies? How close are we going to allow them to get to that line? They think it's strange that you do not run with them in the same flood of dissipation, where dissipation means destruction. Speaking evil of you. Parents, one of our jobs is to prepare our child to be able to reason. That when they hear the things that their teachers are saying, when they hear the things that their friends are saying, that they can reason, that they can work through these situations and these scenarios, that they can understand that God is not just giving a commandment for each and everything that they are to do and not to do, but He teaches, and we're going to look at this tonight, through precepts also, that He teaches through judgments, that He teaches through testimonies. And all these things are to teach us the very mind of our God so that He will have our hearts and we can make proper discernment of what is good and what is bad. They're going to make bad decisions. But let your child know you will make mistakes, just like all of us have. But our God is gracious and our God forgives. They need to know that, so that when they hear these lessons that are hard on some of the things that they're going through and want to and have a desire to participate in, and it seems fun at the age that they are in, and we're telling them, no, you should not do that, you should avoid that, turn away from that path. That's not the path that we go down. That's not the way that God would have you to act. It's not something that Christ would do, so why would you do it? That they're going to do some of those things anyway. But we still serve a gracious God. Proverbs 24 and verse 15 tells the wicked to not lie in wait against the dwelling of the righteous. Do not plunder the righteous dwelling place, because a righteous man may fall 7 times and rise again. But the wicked shall fall by his calamity. It may be that my child, your child, may participate in some of these things with others that cause them to fall. And they may fall several times. They may fall 6, so long as they get up 7. But the wicked, when he falls, he doesn't come back up. He stays there, and he's destroyed. Don't let it be that our children are the ones who fall and never get back up. We're not deserving of God's forgiveness. However, it says in places like Isaiah 55 and verse 6, to seek the Lord while He may be found. Call upon Him while He is near. Let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts. Let him return to the Lord, and He will have mercy on him, and to our God, and He will abundantly pardon. That's who our God is. He is a loving Father who does not want any of His children to stray. He knows the calamity that comes from it and the destruction that will follow. And yet if you will rise again, if you'll come back to Him, not just with your actions, but with your thoughts as well, He will abundantly pardon. And also teach them that today is the best day to make that change. Behold, now is the acceptable time. Now is the day of salvation. So long as you draw breath, there's opportunity. As I asked a few moments ago, have you had a conversation with your child recently that makes you supremely confident that if today was the day, they're ready to meet their God? If you haven't had that conversation, let today be that day. My question I'm going to leave with you is, what are you going to be talking about today? Is it going to be the ball game? Is it going to be what we're going to have for lunch? It's going to be about they need to clean their room. They need to do whatever it is. Or is it going to be about things that are eternally important? Let today be that first day where you start. I hope this has been encouraging to you. There are a lot of parents that are sitting around you that have also had to face the same things that you're going through. And we're here to support one another, to help one another. If you failed in any of those things and you need help, let us know so that we can study together and pray together and work together so we may raise up another generation that's stronger than what we were, and we'll be able to teach the next one behind it. If you're subject to the invitation because you know that today is the day, maybe you're a young person and you've engaged in some of these activities already, and you know that that was not right. You're not ready to stand before God, and you understand that, but you do believe with all your heart that Jesus is the Son of God. If you're ready to obey the gospel this morning, if we can help you in any way whatsoever, please let us know as together we stand and sing.